So our first speaker today is Sharon Ferguson. And, most of the group of photographers here is drawn from the community of digital artists, CODA. Sharon maybe deserves the title digital artist more than anybody else in the group. And you will see why I say that. Sharon.
So sorry for those difficulties. And thank you all for coming. There are so many things you could do in your time. Thank you very, very much. So first off, I'd like to say I've been around CODA. I've been around CODA for about 5 years. And I have to say they are the most amazing group of photographers I have ever met. And I am nowhere near anywhere level of all of their expertise. So, but I do something a little different. I think you'll enjoy seeing. So just a little background about myself. So I grew up luckily in a family that had artists. I had an aunt and uncle who made their living doing art, sculpture and painting. And they didn't have children, so I was their art daughter. My mom had 6. She didn't notice I was gone. And luckily, I went on to learn about art in school, but really not till later years because I went to a Catholic school and they didn't have any art teachers. As a matter of fact, when I was in high school, people interested in art went in a room and we taught ourselves. No teacher. And then I went on to college and majored in art and education in Montclair State University in New Jersey. And then from there, I went on to my first job teaching art in high school, which I love. Went on to some art administration jobs in San Jose. I was a subject area coordinator for 13 high schools. And then in Palo Alto, their art coordinator, where I learned to love, and I think you'll like this too, developing curriculum, doing professional development with teachers, and did that for the California Arts Project and the Arts Council in Santa Cruz. So I love all of that. So I think we have kindred spirits. So when I was in Palo Alto, I had to, because I was in Palo Alto, look at developing curriculum for digital work. So I found a woman, Caroline Mustard, hard to forget that name. And she was really good at it a long time ago, like 12 years ago. And so she and I worked together to develop some curriculum for students. And we did. And from then on, I kind of got interested in digital art, but the kind that you make, no AI. I don't even think they had that in those days. So I do a combination of lots of things. And I combine, sometimes do completely digital and sometimes traditional and digital. So I made up a word for digital. And I kind of tradigital. Yeah. So, and this is one of them. I'll talk a little more about this piece a little later. So this is my love of traditional media has always been with me, pastel, graphite drawing, and watercolor. And I've done open studios using those media before, but then I got into the mixed media, trying to combine all of it.
Turn off the heat.
When I got interested in photography, I was in college, but I also really was drawn to gravitate toward alternative processes. Do you remember the Polaroid transfers and the manipulation? Wasn't that fun? The SX70, the time zero film, and you could actually take an image with a Polaroid. You could scratch on it, like the second one, and then it would become something else. You actually are moving the emulsion around underneath. And then the other ones are you transfer images to watercolor paper and then hand color them. That was really a fun era. But now I do a variety of different kinds of combinations. So what you see here is I took some photographic references of waves, did a pastel upper left of the waves, then put that into my iPad in an app called Procreate with my Apple Pencil. And in there, I could do layers. So I took a photograph of a beautiful piece of Asian paper and then did a mono print, which is just like a quick print that you make using different texture devices. Took photographs of those and then put them in layers behind the pastel. And then the final part is to take the app Procreate with the Apple Pencil and paint across the top. So it seems like it's coming toward you. I refer to it like, if you're a theater person, like the fourth wall, breaking the fourth wall, where the narrator actually talks to the audience and coming toward you. So that's that. This, however, is a completely digital painting on the way to Monterey, which means I have my iPad and I have my Apple Pencil and I do the entire thing painting with the app Procreate. I'll show you a little bit about that. So surprising a little bit if you haven't seen a lot of this work, that you could do a painting quite like this with just digital.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Maybe you're getting to it.
Yeah, right
So,
here, right.
From scratch, that was a blank slate and you painted
Yeah,
that?
I
or
had some
was it
photograph
from-
references that I look at, just like
Sure.
I would when I paint.
Sure.
And so this shows you what the iPad app Procreate looks like when it's open. So you could see there's a library of brushes and effects. And they just added 122 new brushes, but they called them names like Delio, Ramafranzit. No, the names have nothing to do with what they do, which is quite confusing for people that want to have a connection. So, but you could see I almost always use this one called painting and monoline. And that's how I do most of the sketching and painting, and then do different, like if you see underneath monoline, which is highlighted in blue, you see something called Dove Lake. And I use that a lot for making clouds. And then doing changes in opacity. And also you can erase, undo, smudge, and all of that. But does that make some sense? And you see the color wheel there? You just grab your colors and go ahead and paint like you would with traditional media. Lots of options there. Yeah, they don't have one that says make a painting on the way to Monterey with some cycling. So where did it all start? It started for me, like I mentioned, about designing curriculum for children. And this was the first project way back in the day. And so he said it was when tweets were coming around and people really were using it a lot, and the kids knew what a tweet was. And so he said, well, if tweets were a bird, what would it look like? And you could see the children using their finger, because we had to use tablets and a finger because the styluses weren't that great. Kids will do anything, but which one is your favorite? Night Stalker? How about blue? You see the little baby blue? So cute. Do you not think kids do the best artwork? Yeah.
Did you start with a blank screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Completely blank, yeah. And then even their names, Cuddles. Gabriel's got something to say. So this is kind of the thing I like to do in order to add a little bit of metaphor or meaning. So this is a digital painting. I walk a lot at the Seymour Center on the west side, and I've done a whole series of seasonal paintings of that. And this is a winter scene of that meadow over there. And then I photographed some old paper and put that behind. And like, it's a metaphor for timelessness. Like when you look at that and you think, oh, when is that? When was that? What did it look like? And see if I can get this to go. So if this works, this will show you a little bit about the process. And a recording, the first little bit's a little wonky, but don't mind that. See if I can get it to go. Okay, yeah, that part. Okay, watch.
Oh. Oh. Wow.
So all those are painted in.
Yes,
individually.
you can't see my hand doing it, but those are the strokes.
As though you were
With the
actually
pencil.
painting a picture.
Yes.
Ah,
This is me, invisible.
Yay.
How long did it take to do that?
Unfortunately, Procreate does keep track of the time. Many hours, yeah, like a lot.
Literally.
And you know, it also keeps track of the strokes, which I've had as many as like 10,000 strokes, because I also take away, which is, you know,
And you can use your finger? or do
you
have
could,
to
you
start?
could, yeah, you could.
Wow, that would be good for smudging.
Yeah, I prefer precise smudge tool. They have a little tool. And you could change the shape of the smudge tool to the shape of the tool you're using to paint, which is quite helpful. And then I prefer using things that I've done to make collages because they become interesting. So there's a graphite drawing of hydrangeas on the left, and then the added elements, but then always breaking through that digital painting where I pull it out. Even though that's a graphite drawing, the digital painting is the parts that go beyond the edge, and you can make it look exactly like that. And then the one on the right photographed a cookbook. It was a series I called Edible Flowers. Did a whole series on old cookbooks and then edible flowers. Could do anything. Combine. And then sometimes I like to go and do things that are particularly meaningful for me. And the very first Women's March is the image comes from that. I saw a woman with that sign and I was like, oh, that touches me. And then on the right, I made a collage book. That's an actual physical book that I collaged and then put the text on top and a painting behind. And then the whole idea of the story and making meaning with this, and it's a good place. I know I want to leave time for questions in that, so this will be the last image. I read an article in the paper about after the bombing of Hiroshima, 150,000 people decimated. The only thing that grew back were ginkgo trees. And when they did grow back, they made cuttings of the surviving trees and sent them around the world in a peace project. And after I read that, I said, I love ginkgo trees. And now you see them now, how you can see them around town and how bright and beautiful they are. And so, and when I, do open studios and things like that, I always put a little note next to it so that, we can understand that there's things that from the most dire circumstances, something positive can happen. And I'm hoping that for our future also. And I will answer any of your questions you might have. And thank you so much for letting me show you this. Yeah.
So now that you've printed and thought about this picture specifically, how could you tell a story about the Hiroshima bombing in that story? Would it be a flash of light? Would it be what?
Yeah.
How would you
I think maybe you should do that.
I have some ideas.
Yeah, and that's actually a great idea,
Yeah.
yeah.
When you print these, how big do you print them?
Usually, like 11 by 14 and 16 by 20 framed. And I've had a few done on, some canvas and things like that, but that's my usual size. For that, yeah.
These are all paintings, you said, you use a lot of your own painting on the
A
app.
lot of times I do.
I do work a lot like yours,
Wow. That's great.
but mine is all photography.
Yeah,
I don't paint,
yeah.
but I go into Photoshop. I make my frames, I use stamps.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Different things to get that texture and
Mhm.
things. I'm very interested in this.
Oh,
I'd
cool.
like to talk to you sometime.
Yeah. And come to Open Studios too, or.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So Sharon, I would think one of the challenges would be color, because if you're painting something, you can mix it on the board,
Mhm.
I mean, like even this one. So how do you get
the blending,
gradations
the
digitally?
blending, yeah,
Yeah.
I understand exactly what you're saying. Trial and error and that because if you've done watercolor, you kind of understand blending. And then digitally, it's a little different in its, the surface and lag and, to get something that looks like, it's combined with another color, but it's a lot of blending, even with digital.
So you can set the transparency so the other color comes through your
Exactly.
color.
Exactly. And you can undo.
Right.
I undo all of that.
And it's big, it's big.
Which life had that sometimes? Yeah.
So is there any pastel in this or you?
Not in this
pastels
one.
At all?
Yeah, the first one, you want to go back to that one, the pastel? Let's see. So the one that I showed you with this one. So that's the one that has the pastel.
And that the pastel is actually the wave.
The wave,
Which
yeah.
you photographed.
And then I photographed it in order to put it into the iPad, yeah. Yeah.
And so you're also then, I mean, you want a sharp line, that's a button on the iPad. It's the nature of it.
Yeah,
Versus you want something fuzzy, what's the brush, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. So you see these brushes here,
Yeah,
and you could change the size and the opacity of them. But there's also a smudge tool that you can change the size of and, do some smudging in there. And then here's you could see your color. The color takes a little bit of getting used to, but they have different ways of getting palettes and things like that to know. Oh, I didn't mention, the creators of Procreate are from Tasmania. Tasmania, which it's a state, it's Australia, but it's an island state. Live and learn. And they're quite lovely about answering questions.
what's the other question, I'm not an artist, but seeing people do watercolor, often the first step will be a pencil sketch.
Yeah.
And then.
Oh, yeah.
Do you do something like that?
Yeah, would you like to see one more in process?
Yes.
I have one at the end that I didn't know if I'd have time to. Here, you see the sketch?
Wow.
This one especially, you can see the coming and going. This is walking up the street from with the nasturtiums. Highlights.
Oh.
There you go.
Just this last thing brought a question to my mind about the similarities and differences. So if you were to do this as an actual watercolor and then to do it digitally, are you using a lot of the same techniques, or did you have to completely relearn new techniques to get the same effect?
Combined, it's absolute combination, because it would be hard for me to shut off the brain
Yeah.
from the past. So it's almost a hard thing to answer, but yeah,
I guess.
You could learn
Does the program
completely.
allow you to use a lot of the same techniques?
Yeah.
Sign up.
yes, but a lot of the same words, at least at first they did. And then the latest brushes are, like they actually have the word charcoal and then a bunch of effects that kind of look like charcoal. And like they have one that says cloud. I never use that for cloud. I use the Dove Lake because it looks more fluffy and
Yeah, you said you have the ability to use the undo button, right? You don't have that in the watercolor. Does it change your mind?
yeah, it changed my mind way a lot, which I'm very grateful for. It's the one place you can do that and and you still look, okay.
Because when you do watercolor, you don't have an undo button.
You don't, but you can, actually, those who do it, there's ways of lifting color and over. Yeah, you can cheat there too.
So in your final product here, you could then now take this to Photoshop and do a whole other.
I don't do Photoshop.
Yeah,
You use this one.
Yeah, I just use this, and this is like what, as far as I know, like when you're working now as a fine artist or even an illustrator, you do use this
Ah,
a lot. And you could put it into Photoshop and do other things, but I'm unfamiliar with that world of filters and different things.
it's a big one.
Well, did you make prints?
Yes,
Which is what you.
yeah, then, yeah, it's like a photo, in a way, it's like a photograph in terms of how you present the art. But you use a special paper. There's a company called Red River. And they have great papers. They look like watercolor. They have gloss, they have luster, they have all different kind that digital artists use. A lot of photographers use them too, right? Red River. Mhm.
is there a market for digital prints?
Yeah.
Actually sell the digital.
Yeah. Yeah, I call them painting,
Okay.
because they are.
Ah,
Because, watercolor artists could have a clay done.
yeah.
There's just more than one. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, well,
Good.
thank you very much.
you're so
Sharon.
welcome. You're so welcome.
All right, we're good for our last photographer of the class. So when I originally set up the original list of 8, one of the names I had on it was Bruce Lyon, but we thought there was a schedule conflict. Then it turned out later there wasn't necessarily a schedule conflict. And so then when we had this cancellation, which was just a few days ago, Bruce at the last
2
minute,
days.
2 days ago, yeah, Bruce agreed to come and talk. So Bruce is an old friend and colleague from UCSC. He's just retired from being professor in the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. And he has, for all these years, been the ornithologist on campus. And Bruce has been around the world studying birds. In fact, I'll bet a number of people, you've probably heard Bruce talk before, a hummingbird group with the Arboretum or whatever. Yeah, lots of things. So that's true. Bruce was a general meeting speaker for Ollie, at least once, at least.
Yep.
The at least means it happens
One.
again.
Always happy. Yep. I love teaching, and any chance to come and dip my toe in teaching is great.
In fact, when we did that, I don't remember, it was quite back to back with Bruce and his wife, who is the research director at Elkhorn Slough. Okay, so over the years, I've seen that Bruce, besides being a superb ornithologist and really interested in the behavior of birds, is an excellent photographer. And I thought, well, this is a really good opportunity to see Bruce as functioning, primarily as the photographer and not necessarily as the scientist. So, Bruce.
Thank you, Barry. Well, actually, not necessarily, Barry, you need to see the next slide. They're inseparable in my life, actually, and I'll go through my life. Oh, the lights, yeah.
Okay.
Barry asked me 2 days ago if I could fill this in, and I said no at first. And I often regret saying no, and because I had a really full, I went to a Peregrine Falcon 50-year, I'll show you a slide about that. I just had a packed schedule, and I thought, it's going to take, in one day, I'm going to do this. Part of the problem is I take so many pictures, just finding the images is like the hard part. And I like to have stories to tell, so I didn't just want to randomly throw photos, but it's kind of a mix of stories and randomly thrown photos. But I said yes, and I think I pulled it off. We may have to stop partway through because I have no idea, since this was thrown together so quickly, how long it's going to take. But I'm going to tell you sort of who I am and how the photography fits in my life and sort of my approach to photography. And it really is, my science and photography are inseparable. They keep feeding back to each other. And just 2 months ago, they fed back together, and I'll show you why in interesting ways. And so,
Bruce, little quirk. The Zoomers are seeing presenter view, but you aren't.
It doesn't matter.
Just
yeah, I don't
you have
know.
to, you have to
Yeah, I'm
click
not
on
seeing-
the image.
I don't know how
Barry.
to fix that. And
Barry,
they'll
I
be
do.
messing up. Can they
There's
at
a
least-
box with the image in it. Click on the box with the
There's
image.
no reveal, so it's not like they're gonna not get my jokes or anything.
Okay.
All right, yeah. So this is me at about age 6, and I already knew what I was going to be when I grow up. I tell people, like, how and when did you get interested in birds? And I say I was dropped on my head because I've always been interested in birds. So it was at age 6 that I said I was going to be an ornithologist, and I actually knew what it was because I was already reading adult books because the kids' books were so boring. But my mom actually thought that, oh, I'll turn this point off, that at age 2, I got interested in birds because they used to put me I grew up in Vancouver, British Columbia. They put me in the carport, and there were barn swallows there, and I didn't get bored. I'd watch the barn swallows. And so
Somebody said, do this. Do what? Click on the. That doesn't.
The
do it.
participant, not the presenter.
No.
yeah, I never use presenter mode. It's just a pain in the ass. I just ramble on. And actually, my bird watchers, are there any bird watchers here?
Yeah.
Everybody says, what's your spark bird? I didn't have a spark bird. The spark bird is what triggers your interest in birds. And it's like, oh, a quetzal or something. It was a bird nest that sparked my interest. I climbed a tree. Look, this is not my photo because it was like I was 6 when I did this, or 5. Saw a robin's nest. I thought it was the most gorgeous thing I'd ever seen. So I'm kind of weird. Most people get interested in birds or are birders. I became fascinated by bird nests and reproduction. And so I started reading sort of that. And so I've only become a bird watcher later in life, but I was early on just interested in sort of bird behavior, reproduction, nests, eggs. And so that was my early focus. And I got my first camera so I could photograph bird nests. And as a teenager growing up in Montreal, I hung out with a couple of guys, and we got cameras, stuck a blind up in a tree, 60 feet up in a maple tree right opposite this red-shouldered hawk, took pictures. And the weird thing is we almost instantly sold them and had magazine articles. And back then it was actually pretty easy to be a professional. So we'd take some pictures, we'd sell them. And I thought, well, this is pretty easy. Maybe I'll be a photographer when I grow up. And we would just spend hours watching these birds. And so I got to return to my childhood. Every hour reading scientific papers, but just really focusing and getting to know these birds, but being hidden and not disturbing them. And then sort of high school and college, I started getting involved in science, but helping other people do their science. So I worked for the Canadian Wildlife Service in the Arctic, working on MERS. Here I'm dangling from a cliff, trying not to kill myself. And I was taking my camera with me, so it was still a mix of sort of photography and science and not really sure. And taking time off high school, university to travel the world and doing fun things. This is an ornate hawk eagle. I'd stumbled on a nest. The bird was completely unstudied. So we went back to Tikal, Guatemala, did the first ever study of this. We published the paper. We also published an audio magazine. And so I'm still thinking maybe there's options of being a photographer. This is not my photograph because frickin' Cornell University and Living Bird lost 100 of my best photos. And that was not the digital era. And so those are gone. My very best photos from this are gone. And they were jerks about it. I have friends at Cornell now, so I'm kind of a little bit over the bitterness, but not over the bitterness with Tim Gallagher, who was the editor of Living Bird. He treated me like a complete jerk, and I'm still a bit bitter about that. But again, photography, amazing photography, working as professional photographers and writing scientific papers. And it was kind of like a beautiful blend. And I really liked the sort of expedition style, traveling and bringing your camera and learning stuff. Did it again in Costa Rica. I came across the first ever wild nest of sunbittern. It's a spectacular bird. It's got fake patches on its wings. And spent months with a colleague who was actually a pretty well-known photographer, and I learned a lot from him. We watched this bird, and both of us published, again, separately, photo articles, but Michael Fogden and I also published a paper. Anybody know the book Snakes by Harry Green? There's a beautiful book by Snakes. And Michael Fogden, my co-author here, was a very well-known tropical photographer. He did all the photography for that. And so it was great to hang out with him because I learned how to do all sorts of interesting photography things. So once I got to college, I went to college anyways, but then it was still a choice. Like, should I be a photographer? Should I be a scientist? And I took a course from this guy, Fred Cook, famous ecological geneticist. He worked on Arctic, but doing genetics. And he taught this phenomenal course. And it was about adaptation and natural selection. And I was just, that fascinated me so much. And it made sense of all the stuff I'd been seeing around the world. I decided that I was going to be a scientist and keep photography as a hobby. And so, but the nice thing, and so I've kept doing photography, and actually the way I do research allows for me to actually incorporate photography often as part of the science, outreach, teaching. And this is the nice thing about being older and wiser. And I think I picked the right career, because now I make enough money as a professor, I can buy good equipment. And it's digital, so you can't get screwed over by Cornell University. When they lose your digital copy, it's, well, I happen to have some on a hard drive. So this is, if I start a blog post, I'm going to call it the Darwinian Natural Historian, because I consider myself I'm not Darwin, of course, but the early scientists really paid a lot of attention to the natural history of what they were studying, and they let the organisms tell them what's going on. And it's very much what I do, and it also informs my photography. I basically really want to photograph not just pretty birds, but really their behavior, and take pictures that really shows us some of like their adaptations or just an ecological context to it. So this is I call myself a Darwinian natural historian as a photographer. And many of you know a very famous Darwinian natural historian. And as soon as I put the picture up, you're going to go, ah, yeah, it's David Attenborough.
Yeah.
Is there anybody here who you've mostly seen David Attenborough's things? They're fascinating because he doesn't dumb it down. If you actually go to PBS, they make it into a big adventure story, a drama. Attenborough just basically sold the animals or plants or oceans or whatever, and didn't dumb it down, presented the science in a really clear way. And he's like one of the most famous broadcasters ever in history because he was so good at it. And he basically, so that's the approach I try to emulate. I think he's a hero of mine, and he pretty much always gets it right. And I've learned a ton. I'm a scientist, and a lot of my scientist friends, like, they watch an Attenborough show and they go, even about birds, like the life of birds, and they like, oh my God, I just learned so much stuff. So that's kind of my approach. One more just thing before we get to the photos. As a scientist, I focused on two different broad themes. I'm very interested in reproductive strategies, especially females. There's a lot of focus on males. And I'll just very briefly talk about this. That's a coot nest. And I also focus on signals. And in birds, when you look at the field guide and say, aren't those pretty birds? They're pretty, but there's function involved. I won't talk about it. But this gold and black on the golden crowned sparrow functions as signals. And so what looks like a beautiful photo to the average person, I'm going, look at those magnificent signals. And we've done experimental manipulations. of those to prove that. So it's really fun to integrate kind of the photo showing a trait that we actually deeply understand as scientists. So that's my background, and that's kind of when I do my photography, that's the kind of baggage that I bring with it. And if anybody has any questions, just we can keep this free form if you want. Oh, this was a slide I was going to take out, but I thought I'd just leave it in, sort of like, I want to make sure to make a couple points. So this was notes to me, but also one thing you discover I actually study what's called behavioral ecology, and that's studying behavior in the context of evolution. And so you're thinking about why do they do the behaviors? Why would it be adaptive? And what behavioral ecologists realize pretty quickly is when you tag and study a population of birds, there's tremendous amounts of individual variation. It's not like Ronald Reagan when he said, you've seen one redwood, you've seen them all. They're different. And as a photographer, that's important because one way that birds are quite different, and we see this in a lot of different things, is there are tame individuals and there are shy individuals. It's a well-known phenomenon. They have personalities. And as a photographer, you want to, when you find the tame ones, you work with them because they're not always tame. So you want to be open to stumbling across an unusually tame representative of something and then pounce on that moment and enjoy your time with it, either watching it or photographing it, because that doesn't always happen. And for those of you that have pets, you'll realize this. Animals are predictable. They have routines, they're predictable. And if you start to pay attention, you can see those patterns. And I'm going to talk about some peregrine falcon work I did. And the patterns are incredible, and it allows you to capture moments or observations that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do because you're prepared for place and time for them to do certain things. And then I'm going to show you this. I'm going to show you with the peregrine falcons. The starting point for a lot of nature photography is to take a picture of the bird. And a friend of mine used to, he's an insect guy, he used to derisively say, not another bird on a stick photograph. And you've seen it, the internet is full of them. And those are great, but you can go beyond that. And so it's fun to think about going beyond just a bird on a stick. And also by photojournalism, it's taking a series of photos that really tell a story. And so I tend to approach my photography by storytelling. And I'll tell you a couple of those stories. So I brought in, this is not an amazing photo, but I've used places to sort of take you to where we're going to go. And this is where I did my PhD work in central British Columbia. This was not one of my study wetlands, but it was my photo wetland. This was such a good photo, so packed with birds. I would bring my gear over and just visit this wetland to take pictures. But I was working on this bird. This is an American coot. It's not a duck. It looks like a duck, but it's related to rails. Extremely interesting. And the way that I can get pictures like this is, as part of my research, I do a lot of tagging. And to follow the tagged birds, that's a photographic blind. That's a homemade blind I made. It's an inner tube with a sandwich of plywood. And so while I'm actually collecting data on birds, there's a nice table that has my camera sitting on it at all times. And so when you're out there, 8 hours, stuff happens and you just happen to have your camera there and you can just capture things. And it's like being invisible. We once had two of these blinds close to each other, and I was in one of them, and my student was in another. It was a bald eagle sitting on top of the blind. I couldn't get a picture in time because it would have been amazing, but they work. And so it's kind of like being invisible, and it's almost cheating because you're just floating around. You're at eye level, beautiful thing, and you're able to see all sorts of fun things. And so, yeah,
in the water.
You're in the water with waders. There's a little seat with a dog glitch. So basically, it's a wooden seat. You can get in and you clip it up. You've got your coffee, of course. You've got your lunch, data. So you want to basically collect some data and your camera gear, and you're just out there sometimes 8 hours a day. And you see remarkable things. Yeah.
Your coots at Westlake.
I go down there all the time. Yeah. They mostly are wintering, but they breed there. But the bass always eat their babies. And their babies are kind of spectacular. This is the reason I worked on coots is because of this. That's, baby coots are so bizarre. They're fluorescent orange, and this was my gateway drug to coots. As I walked into a marsh, I discovered a baby coot, and that's not natural. And so a colleague and I hatched a plan to do some research on this and look at the evolution of coot chick colors. But that's taken from about 15 feet away. Parents totally oblivious, feeding its babies, and the babies are totally dependent on the parents for their first 10 days. Parents dive down. That's also great for giving talks at meetings, lectures to undergrads. Undergrads love this because they're not just showing pretty pictures, they're actually showing meaningful biology in the picture. But yeah, and look at this, it's balder than me, if that's possible. This is ultraviolet. This is like, if you look at it, it's like a black light on the disco floor. It's like this chick is like glowing, which is crazy.
How long are they in that stage? How long are they?
About a week. And they grow out of it. They don't grow any new orange feathers. All of those orange feathers come from the carotenoids, the things like you get in carrots, because the birds can't make their own carotenoids. Mom puts them in the eggs. Coot eggs are like bright red, the yolks, because they have the highest concentration of carotenoids. The babies grow those as an embryo, and that's the last time they grow orange feathers. And the orange functions in the first week. We've done studies on that. And so this is what I actually went to Canada to study parental care and how they feed their babies, and just stumbled on this by accident. What do you notice about that photo? Two are different eggs. And actually, if you start to study it, female coots were laying eggs with reckless abandon in each other's nests. And so that was my entire PhD, and I switched gears within a week of arriving in British Columbia. But this is a photo course, not a biology course. While taking this, sometimes you just stumble on nice photos. And so to illustrate this, the point is how we can identify eggs among different coots. I took this fun picture. These are eggs from lots of different females, but it actually makes a pretty nice picture. And I've sold this picture, and I took it just to use for talks. These are all eggs from different coots, and it just shows you that variation, but it also makes for a pretty lovely photo. And a journalist came and visited me, and it's the first time I learned what the word taupe means. When he wrote his article, he said there were all these taupe eggs sitting on top of Bruce's dinner table. And I went, what's taupe? That's taupe, color taupe. And dramatic things, coots spend basically approximately most of their time fighting. And so when you're in your line, you're just pick up a camera and get a picture of them fighting. They are armed with eagle-like talons, and when you handle coots, you can get your hands ripped to shreds if you don't wear gloves. And I've actually met people with big scars from working with coots. And I wanted to point this out, there are different ways to take pictures. So this is a nice, sharp picture of a coot, and it shows the drama and the talons and their big feet. But sometimes you want to actually slow things down and just get the action. And so like they come in, both males and females fight, and they're kicking and screaming and making a big fight. And the reason they're fighting is they're defending really fierce, tiny territories, and all the food for their babies comes from those territories. And so they're fighting to maintain the ability to feed their families. So these are not play fights.
They fight to the death.
I've never seen it. There are reports in literature, and I've thought I was going to see a death. I saw this brutal. Basically, the territories get full so that not everybody gets to breed. And when it's the last few birds, they fight like crazy because it's like, this is it. If we don't get this territory, we're done for the season. And those are some of the most brutal fights. I see them holding each other under the water, and just like, these are not nice birds. This is a good reason why you should never go to nature to justify humans. People want to do that, even my colleagues. They want to make Nemo an exemplar for diversity in humans. Is like, for every nice example, there's crappy examples. And so just don't go to nature to justify. We get to make our own rules. And they beat up their kids. Spanking is widespread in those. And so here's just a couple more. I'll just show you. These are just some of the things you see while you're out in your blind. This is a horned grebe, just spectacular. You're low to the water. It's very nice to get that low profile because you get beautiful backgrounds. This is an absolutely gorgeous bird. Barrow's goldeneye. I actually study these birds. There's just gorgeous, gorgeous birds. So these are wetlands packed full of nice birds. And I do mostly birds. I'll show you a couple of mammal pictures just so that you'll realize I'm not completely a bird brain. I do take pictures of lots of plants and other things as well. Ear grebes, it's adorable. These are babies. There's colonies of them. They nest in colonies. They ferry their babies around. So I took this, I think it was like 2008. And it started as a photograph, but then a very well-known journal, the Journal of Ecology, prestigious journal, started a new thing. A lot of scientific journals have returned to natural history. They realize that that's, for biology, you can't really separate biology from natural history. And so ecology has this new type of paper called a scientific naturalist, and it's focused on, we want you to start with a picture that tells a story and then go from the picture to have an idea. And so I thought, this is my ticket to one of those. And it turned out I got on the cover and I got a paper about like, why do birds carry their babies? And so that circle of science photo was the photo fed back into science. And they're, to me, again, they're just, sometimes they're just not really separable. Taking this picture and watching grebes carry their babies just made me think like, well, that's kind of weird. Coots and most ducks don't carry their babies.
What's the quick answer to the question?
They don't have territories. They forage far from their babies, and so and they feed them one at a time. So if they didn't carry their babies, they'd have to go out here, come back. They're basically a floating restaurant. They can take their babies to the food, is the short answer. So yeah, floating restaurant. It's a hypothesis.
So when they're foraging, what do they do with the babies?
One parent feeds, and it's great because I have other pictures I won't show, but the babies are in the back and they basically get delivered food in bed, breakfast in bed. So, and then the parent gets tired, shakes its back, the babies fall in the water, and then it swims off. The other one comes on, the babies crawl on the back, the other one. It's adorable. Yeah. And now we're going to switch gears a little bit and just briefly, this is where I should be. I should be in Argentina studying this bird. Look at the contrast. That's an American coot chick. And I got fascinated by this Argentinian coot, completely lacking in any colors except a little bit of on the beak. And this is really important. So the fact that doesn't have those colors got me interested. I'm collaborating with an Argentinian biologist, and I should be there, but these coots they're not predictable. And so I'm just waiting for the phone call that says, okay, they're nesting or not nesting. So they're not nesting yet. So that's why I can be here with you. But to do that work, you get to go down to high Andes elevation. This is at over 14,000 feet. Every year I lose 20 pounds. It's hard working up there. We brought our floating blinds down. We built some floating blinds. So all the same thing I just talked about. So you're now down in a completely different universe, seeing incredible things. Instead of seeing grebes, you're seeing flamingos from your floating blind. And it's absolutely spectacular. And so this is, again, so as you can see, just very fun. You're out there, you're invisible, getting data and photographs. It's quite fun. And I should point out, I've switched over from a SLR, single lens reflex camera, to mirrorless. They're much smaller, so that giant lens, you see people with giant lenses, you can get actually better photos in some cases with small. I now no longer use my really expensive equipment because this is better. This is small, which means I can now, while I'm out collecting data, I used to leave my big camera because you can't really walk around a swamp with a giant camera. I have this with me at all times, and it allows me to actually now get stuff. I'm going to show you a sequence. You're ready. And a lot of what I do is I'm always sort of taking test shots to make sure that if something happens, I'm ready in a split second. And fortunately, I was able to capture a sequence that basically explains everything you need to know about these South American coots. This is a gull, Andean gull. American coot chicks, their biggest hurdle to survival is food, and about 50% die of starvation. Horned babies are taken by gulls, and this gun tried to snatch this tag chick. You can see it's got a tag in the back of its neck and missed, and the parent was able to chase it off. And that's basically, And I was just had the camera with me while we were checking the nest, and the bird came in. The gulls are such jerks. I was able to capture it. And so the mirrorless camera has really been a game changer for me. And you can, this is just one last thing from the lake. You see amazing things down in these wetlands. This is in extreme northern Argentina, right at the Bolivian border. And then like cars make good blinds too. On the way home one day, we saw this male tinamou. It's to ostrich. Only the males take care of the kids. These beautiful pajamas, stripy little pajama kids walking away from the car. So it's, again, camera's always ready with the setting ready so that if something happens, you can pounce. And this is just, I had to include this just because it's one of my favorite birds. There's lots of cool hummingbirds up in the high Andes. This is a red-tailed comet, which is a spectacular bird.
And in this, I know that sometimes, you know, the colors are not real, they're all, but reflected.
They're never real in hummingbirds. Yeah, this is all iridescence. So if you were to look at this in the wrong light, it would be black. Yeah, so it's all what's called structural color, like an oil slick on a puddle. So this is where, and I should point out, ethics. And so I do a lot of work at the Arboretum. And one year there were a couple of hummingbird nests there, become very popular, but people aren't learning any natural history. I've often with people taking pictures, they've got $10,000 worth of equipment. They don't even know the bird name. They're wanting to get that amazing picture for Instagram. There were 2 nests at the Arboretum of hummingbirds, and both perished because they were bugged by hordes of photographers getting too close, wanting to get that shot. And so I really stress with people, if you're going to work with nature, know your stuff and know the limits. And there's actually, from my biology training, there's actually a pretty important lesson here on what you should really avoid messing with. And this is something I study. So the photographer that took this robin's nest probably was not causing much of a risk that bird would desert its nest. Robin, and there's a reason for that. Robins are songbirds, and songbirds, like sparrows and robins, only live 1 or 2 years. We know that. We tag sparrows at the Arboretum. They have very short lifespans. So that robin's nest could be the only nest it ever has in its lifetime. It's very, very valuable. It's not going to give up on it. It's its only kid. Now, if you look at a bald eagle, this was taken in British Columbia, kind of a nice dramatic thing. Bald eagles live 10 to 20 years. They don't even start to nest until they're 5 years old. If you even look at their nest, they're going to desert. So photographers think, oh, I'm going to go and photograph bald eagles. They put up a blind. They'll desert. There's many, many examples of that, of birds of prey. They're just much more sensitive because their lifespan, their life history is very different. So you kind of have to know some biology. And I think so when you do bird photography, you have to be aware of that. And having studied nesting birds for 30 years, I have a pretty good. And that allowed me, what I'm going to talk about next is some work with peregrine falcons that allowed me to actually get some amazing experiences with peregrine falcons without bothering them. They're birds that you could easily cause to desert if you didn't know what you're doing. And so one day walking along the cliffs of Santa Cruz Canyon was still recovering from the DDT thing. And this was just a decade ago. And I was very excited, but also intimidated. It's like I didn't want to bug them. And so for the first couple of years, I was really far back, didn't do much. But the birds eventually just got so incredibly used to me to the point where I felt like Jane Goodall with her chimpanzees. Over time, I put in the hours I actually felt a bit bad because I should have been writing papers. I was still a professor, but it was such an opportunity. I couldn't pass it up. And as you'll see, I'm glad I didn't save it for retirement because it would have never happened. So I spent an awful lot of time watching these peregrines. And these are spectacular birds. And this is why it was fun to talk about this. I've got 50,000 images of these peregrines, a lot of unique stuff. I've actually thought about a book project modeled after something. So I thought it would be fun to just sort of go through that. And just 2 days ago, there was the 50th anniversary of the Santa predatory bird group, Santa from extinct. And a lot of this is talking about Falcon. It is a performance machine. I mean, it's just, this thing can do what fighter jets can't do. They fly fastest bird in the world, 200 miles an hour. They're built. And I like this photograph because it just sort of shows that streamlined sort of shape. It shows something about this bird. It's not just a bird flying. It's like this bird has its afterburners on, and it's impressive what they can do. And so I sort of became like R.J. Baker. If you don't know this book, The Peregrine by J.A. Baker, many people consider this to be one of the finest bits of nature writing ever done. I just want this extraordinary poetic portrait of two peregrine falcons is one of the most beloved works of nature writing ever published. The guy just had a turn of phrase. He just went out every day and just watched these peregrines and wrote what they were eating, what they were doing, and he just creates a sense. Some reviews of the book said he almost like turned into a peregrine falcon. And then I just discovered this today, that there's a version of this that's a book on tape read by Attenborough. That would be inspiring to me, as to Baker's stuff as read by Attenborough. But what I realized was basically what Baker did, he was looking at them in winter. I'm basically, if I ever write a book, it's going to be called The Peregrines, because it's about the whole family and it's about breeding. But it's basically that for a decade, going out almost every day in the breeding season and just watching these birds and documenting all sorts of things about them. So many photographers, I actually threw this in at the last minute. I didn't even have this. This is the standard this is a portrait. This is a nice portrait. I have lots of them. I stopped taking them eventually because they're just, but this is basically showing, this is the bird on the stick for peregrine. It's the bird on the rock. It's just a peregrine. It's not doing much. It's kind of like whining a bit. They whine a lot. It's probably whining at the female. So I'm going to show you a lot of sort of behavioral things that are not portraits. Like they can go 200 miles an hour in the steep. This is a bird that's about to fold its wings. They get a teardrop shape. And when you're watching them hunt, and if they're too far and they start going, you lose them. You can't actually follow them. They're going so fast. It's like they Star Trek. They've gone into warp speed and they've gone from things. And so they're very, very impressive birds. And sometimes actually getting the motion, rather than getting it sharp, getting the motion. Here's the female with a dove. Their favorite food, one of the pairs I watched, was a Eurasian collared dove, which is not a native dove. So they're helping keep that under control. There's a lot of really interesting biology here, like orcas and sea otters. These guys specialize. So this pair specialized on collared doves. Their next door neighbor loved gulls. And so you've seen one peregrine, you haven't seen them all, because their personalities are distinct and their diets are often distinct. Yes? I had the wrong setting on my camera, and it was on the cliff. They often come in and perch before they go to the nest. So I knew where she'd be, and she just left, and I just panned with her. So I think it was like a 60th of a second or a 30th of a second. I had the wrong setting on, but it turned out pretty well.
One shot.
I have a couple, yeah. But then sometimes I do that. Sometimes I'll slow down to a 30th or a 60th just to get that kind of blurry motion, because it's actually can be quite beautiful. I do burst, but that was the only one that was decent. So yes, I'm often shooting, when I'm doing this stuff, burst speed 15 frames a second. I have terabytes and terabytes of images because of that. It's good. No. Well, I mean, it does. It focuses, but I'm panning with it. Yeah. And the new equipment's just getting better and better and better. It's ridiculous. It is almost cheating. I like this just because it just sort of like, sometimes you don't need the close up. These birds are out there. They're hunting migratory water birds, and just like this bird cruising by with the waves in the background. It really just shows you a sense of what these birds are like. Again, not a portrait, but just sort of like the family scene. Here's the male. female's on her nest. In a little bay. The male's waiting because the male incubates. And I should point out, this is probably taken with a normal lens. After about 4 years, the birds got so tame. This wasn't their original, like they were in a little cave and something, an owl or something might have taken the nest. And they re-nested. And to be respectful of the birds, I would be like about 100 feet from the nest at my little lunch area. They moved their nest to where I ate my lunch at eye level. I couldn't believe it. It's like, I'm trying to be respectful, but they brought their nest where I was 15 feet away at eye level. So I was able to actually, these birds are already tame and ignore me. That opened up a whole bunch of fun things. I can just sit there and they'd ignore me and fly in, and you can predict. So basically, and these birds are very, very predictable. But at times my camera gear wasn't great. So these birds forced me to spend a lot of money to upgrade cameras. And every time I got a new camera, it was like almost instant. You could see the effect. I'll show you. My early cameras would not track. And then I got a new camera and I did a test on the first day I got the camera. And I got like 100 razor sharp shots. This is the bird coming into its favorite perch. I'm 15 feet away. I know it's going to come. I'm just waiting. And then the camera, it just like, so camera gear actually does make a difference. And this is fun. Those feathers at the top are designed specifically for flying at very slow speeds. You know, when you get on a jet and when they're taking off, the wing gets bigger. That's because at slow speeds, you don't have as much lift. It's exactly what those are. That's the equivalent of the slots on an airplane. As that bird's coming in, it doesn't want to stall and fall into the beach. And so it's a little extra wing that comes up to give them that, to reduce turbulence and give them lift. And I like to think that that's like the angel of death. It looks so angelic, but that's a prey species' worst nightmare. These guys are lethal. And here's another one. Here's the male. It's got a Fowler rope. It's like the camera gear does almost make it too easy, but it's kind of fun. But I had to have tamed the birds over a few years. And you also realize there's a perch that it loved, and you just wait by the perch. You know that I watched it catch that Fowler rope and then come back and perch. So you just basically, you can predict with some certainty what's going to happen and be ready for it. And here is another portrait, but sometimes the light is nice. Sometimes you just see interesting light. Evening light can be kind of dramatic. And so I do a lot of, I like to photograph people too. And I remember sometimes photographing people, and I like backlighting a lot. Having people correct me is like, no, they need to be looking at the sun. And it's like, so you can have people squinting at the sun, or you can have the sun behind them. And here's this is, I could predict that they made a lot earlier in the season. And you can predict that they're going to do it. And so I would just wait for them, and I could actually do different times. So during the daytime, there was sun. I went back in the evening and thought maybe they'll come back with a different lighting. So exact same rock, you can see that the lighting is quite different and very different feel. And so you can play with the lighting. You can think, you can go beyond just like, am I going to get a picture of a bird? You can really think about what's my desired photographic effect here. And so you can work with the light and things like that. Yeah.
You can predict what they're going to propagate. What sort of behaviors do they exhibit before they actually that makes
no, I can predict. Well, you can predict the timing, but I'm predicting actually where they're going to go on a given day. They're very consistent about when they lay their eggs, and so basically, once you follow them, like March 1st, you might expect March 1st or March 2nd. So these birds they have a calendar, and they're pretty good. So I was speaking more about on an event, if they're going to catch a prey species, I'm pretty sure they're going to come back here, and I'll show you in a second. And then they also have favorite butcher shops that they take the prey to that are kind of macabre, and that took a while. Yeah.
That scene, I mean, the bird's a spectacular one, but the place that it's perched is also astounding.
I know.
What is that?
Birds, it's just a dirt pinnacle. I mean, birds sometimes have good taste. Sometimes they have crappy taste, but sometimes they just do the right things. And this is just a beautiful conglomerate sort of dirt pinnacle that they would perch on. Yeah. So, yeah.
vocalization. You know, your last couple of shots here. You know, somebody asked about warning, you know.
Oh, they're always chattering. Yeah, and interestingly, I've condensed this down to a lot of action. 90 to 95% of the time, watching these birds is like watching paint dry. They're sit and wait predators, so they just sit there doing nothing, and then stuff happens. But the nice thing about that, they always tell you when stuff's happening because they whine a lot. So the female's sitting there waiting for the male. If the male has caught something, so get the camera up. So I was actually able to take a folding chair and my laptop and write some journal articles while watching these birds. So I didn't feel like I was cheating so much. It's like, yeah, I'm in my office writing papers. And one of my colleagues found me and busted me about John Thompson. John Thompson came and said, "What are you doing?" And I thought, should I keep it a secret? No, I can trust John. So I told John, well, I'm at my office. And if you look 15 feet away there, you'll see a peregrine falcon. And I'm like, oh my God, mind blown. Landing on the female. Yes, like if you go back to this one, and notice he's very polite. He doesn't grab her back. So they're mating. His claw hurt her, and in his next shot, he's about to land on the female. Yeah, but I just like the land. I have like 30 in a row that the camera got it, but I just thought that was a nice one of him coming in. Yes. The male is substantially smaller. The male's about 20% smaller than females, which is common in birds of prey and very common in birds of prey that eat birds. So the female is the boss. She controls the food. He'll come in. He's very subservient to her. She's big, presumably to defend the nest from babies. So they divide the role, the labor a little bit. The male does more of the hunting. Female does more of defending the nest. And the females are the really, really tough ones. And here's an example of, this is the next door neighbor. They all brought their prey to the same thing. So I would just watch them when it's phalarope season. Watch them. I sometimes will see 10 attempts in a day and maybe 5 or 6 captures. I know they're going to bring it to this spot. So I'm just waiting there. Comes back in. Female phalaropes are more colorful than male. So good taste to bring back a nice bird. And then this bird did something that peregrines almost never do. They always carry the prey in their feet and have it hidden. The male, just to be nice, picked it up on his beak and flew off. That's like a once in a decade photograph for me because they never carry their prey. And you can just see this poor little fellow. A friend of mine in Sweden is a well-known behavioral ecologist. And when I told him I work on peregrines, he said, I hate fucking peregrines because this is what he studies. And they are brutal. They are very brutal. And so this pair would eat phalaropes. They would also eat gulls. And gulls about the same size. And here, a couple of things about peregrines. They hunt as a team. This was well known by photographers, but I discovered it without knowing it. I watched them go out and go after a gull together. And as a team, they're doubly lethal. And then they share the prey. So here's the female, and the male's kind of lurking around. But they'll actually share food as well, which turns out to be their undoing sometimes. But this is a California gull that they were dining on. And this bird, I don't know what it was doing. It was a leftover little piece of California gull, but I'm showing it to others. It makes a visually arresting photo. It just kept flying loops with this wing. I don't know, it's having fun. But that allowed me to take a bunch of pictures and then just to show you, you get different backgrounds and I have like 20 like this, all with different backgrounds. And then you can sort of like, well, what's the better background? So next go around, so I kind of like this one, but maybe some people like that one. But I have like 5 or 6 different backgrounds because she kept flying around with her like carcass of a gull. I kind of like that one too. It's just as a aesthetic photograph. It's kind of like framed by the gull. Her chick's right over here, and she's just sitting on this gull carcass. But it pretty much epitomizes what these guys do for a living. And they catch some pretty astonishing thing. This is a guillemot, and it's brought in. I'll show you what they look like. It's the red feet are distinctive, and the chicks just are like stuffed to its things, and the male's busy trying to carve that. But I do also, yes.
I know, weird question, but there was about 2 pictures ago, male and female on that gull.
Yeah.
But what was left is like entrails over to the left.
Yes.
Are those for the baby?
No, they don't eat a lot of predators will not eat certain parts of the bird that are like the gizzard, like there's just a few things. So, wait, oops. Yeah, they often won't eat some of the digestive parts. But these guys, unlike the literature, they eat all the bones. Like it's for smaller things, and the literature doesn't have that. And so I think in gulls they won't eat that, but for smaller birds, they just eat everything. I've got a picture I didn't include it today of a chick swallowing a dove's foot. It's got the foot sticking out of its mouth. So they eat everything. Yeah. And so sometimes I also photograph the prey. So this is a nearby picture at Davenport of what a guillemot looks like when it's not being eaten by a gull also. And if you're interested in photography, there's a colony of these right in town at the base of Stockton Avenue. So you can go and photograph these birds. And I'll end, if there's time, talking about options, what you can see in Santa Cruz, because this is a great place to be a nature photographer. And I kind of like this as a portrait, just like this is half of the dove, of the collared dove with the female. This is their favorite plucking spot. And I'll show you another thing. It's like a morbid, I call it sort of like Satan's pillow fight. It's got remains of hundreds and hundreds, and they just bring their prey there. And at first, peregrines don't like you watching them with food. And peregrine biologist told me it's because other things are vulnerable. Things steal their prey. Golden eagles will actually kill peregrines. So this might have been taken. I would set up my camera and then I could run it through my computer. So sometimes you can actually almost have a remote thing. I set the camera up on this and then I went over and hid, and I could run my camera through my laptop. So that's how I was able to get that, because they were kind of skittish. Maybe they were embarrassed. Look at that. Look at Satan's pillow fight. Like, look at, there's an awful lot of feathers here. And sometimes you see some colorful things that tell you some other things that they didn't eat but doves. But there's a lot of doves being eaten by these birds. And just a little bit on reproduction. Because they nested at eye level, I was able to just basically, they have these gorgeous eggs. There's the male giving me the stink eye before he sits down. Normally, I have lots of pictures where he's looking tame, but that was just a fun one where he's looking pretty intense. It's like, these are my eggs. Don't even think of looking at them. Here's the male coming in to exchange males. This male liked to incubate, and so coming in.
You're banded.
This guy was banded. He was banded in the nest as a baby. The bander said it was a female, but turned out he had other things on his mind. Yes?
Has there been a change in the number of eggs that they produce as a result of climate change?
Not yet, but we're going to see in about 2 seconds, there's much bigger fish to fry than climate change. I have to end on a bummer note, unfortunately. I kind of like this one. This is like the male looking tenderly at his baby, just like tender killer, like that he's just gone out and murdered a bunch of phalaropes, and then he shows this tenderness towards his chick. It was fun. It was fun to do the breeding biology. This is just backlight in the evening. This is the female coming in. The male had just brought prey, and then whenever the male has prey, the female says, "Nope, I feed the family here." So they were like, she was coming in, and this is the fluffy baby that's also grabbed the prey. So there's a lot of food fights in peregrine falcon land. And this is nice backlighting. This shows the baby. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous bird. They've sometimes had up to 4 kids. This year they only had 1 chick, so it varies from year to year. 3 weeks to 4 weeks. I'd have the exact date, but I'm not sure yet. And then you see when they're tame, you see this is a chick. The parent had given a band-tailed pigeon carcass to its sibling. This guy stole the food from its sibling, came over and landed in front of me. And then the mother she was not happy about that. She tried to get the pigeon and give it back to the other one, as my implication, because she tried for 10 minutes. She's like, under this guy, and that mantling behavior is like, it's mine, stay away. And the kid eventually just kept it and was like, aha, I won. And just one more thing. So there's a peregrine falcon. What's not shown is the reason that gull chick got dropped is the fledgling had it. Fledglings are really dumb. The fledgling had dropped the gull chick after getting it from the parents, so the parents diving down to get the gull chick again. This is the bummer part of it. Everything I've just shown you does not exist anymore. They are all dead. They died from avian flu. And so I'm glad I didn't put this off for retirement, because it would have been nothing. And so sadly, but at least in a good thing, this was a fun project that was not connected to my science, but it's now become my science again because of the disappearance of all these birds. I reached out to the local predatory bird group, and we're now writing a paper on this. The person in charge is Zika Galutz. I don't know if you know her. They just celebrated their 50th anniversary. This is an organization that helped bring the peregrine back. So if you want to fund a noteworthy institution, it helps her do censusing. And this is a figure that we put together with Zika's data and a little bit of our data. This is proportion of nest sites occupied. Peregrines are very traditional. They're limited by where they can breed, not by food. And when they've got a good breeding site, it's always occupied. And if the birds die, instantly there's a whole bunch of non-breeders out there that are waiting to step in. It gets filled. And so starting in 2000, basically 100% occupancy. That's a healthy population. Avian flu hit in California, got here in 2021, and by 2022, things were starting to go down a little bit and then completely plummeting and showing no signs of abatement. The loss per year is the same. So this year we're expecting that it may be the same, but we're down to, at best, about 35% of the Bay Area population, and probably that's an optimistic estimate. So sadly, my hobby turned back into science, and this paper is getting written up. But it's actually going to be an important paper because the Bay Area birds are not doing well, but it seems like the Yosemite population that's been studied by different groups is doing just fine. So it's very patchy, and that allows conservation biologists to invest. Basically, the Bay Area is not at this moment something that you might want to invest in if we can't stop the mortality. Although there is possibilities of vaccinations. All right. And this doesn't help. The fact that the male and female share food and they're getting it from the prey they eat. Peregrines love to eat food that's particularly likely to give them avian flu. Gulls and ducks are reservoirs. So this is an indicator species that's particularly likely to encounter avian flu. And, a pair might eat 500 birds a year. They're out there sampling everything. And the fact that they share food means that if one of them gets sick, the other one's going to get sick. And that's why we're not seeing single birds at sites. Everybody's going. And that's probably a function of their biology. All right, random photos. We have time. We got like 10 minutes. Just now, some fun sort of pictures to illustrate other things. That was a deep dive into something that I'm pretty passionate about, but now just some pretty pictures. We'll start with Costa Rica. See, I take more than bird pictures. I like this. This is mother and baby howler monkey riding out a storm on a branch in front of our cabin. It's very nice. The primates are very, very fun to photograph. And at this site, we go to this one site that's just dripping with monkeys, of spider monkeys and howler monkeys. This is an endangered Jeffrey's spider monkey. They're hilarious, full of personality. Here are their babies on their backs. They have a prehensile tail. Wouldn't it be great to have a prehensile tail? And so they often are dangling. This is dangling right in front of our front porch, and just to eat special berries. kind of cheating. I went to a party and the guy said, it's called little tiger cat or Roncia, and it had been raised in captivity and then released into a national park and became a wild animal and actually bred and had kittens, but it was pretty tame. And so it was an opportunity. I spent a whole day watching this absolutely gorgeous animal. It leaps across the trees, it eats squirrels, and just a phenomenal experience. And so when you encounter opportunities like that, it's good to jump on them. It was a highlight to be able to watch this adorable animal for a day. Here's a fun example. This is a spectacled owl being mobbed by a magpie jay. And I knew there was a family group near the lodge of owls. And I heard toucans and jays going crazy. And when you hear birds alarm calling, often that says there's a raptor nearby. And so I just thought, I bet they found the spectacled owl. So I ran over, and sure enough, although as I was setting my camera up, there are toucans here, but I couldn't set my camera up fast enough and mob them. And so it's something that's studied a lot. So but hard to photograph. So I like this photograph because it shows a jay mobbing an owl. And the owl was kind of pissed off by all this, but by being so puffy, I was able to see plumage features, that nice stripiness that just doesn't really show up that often. I like this. I like the pose, but it's also, these are important seed dispersers. And so just getting this for my sort of classes, just showing a classic seed dispersing animal with its, with the fruit it disperses is kind of fun. And it's also, what a gorgeous bird. This is Brazil, not Costa Rica, but I had to include it. This is a hypersocial bird, like several pairs use the same nest. It's kind of like that film Bob, Ted, Carol, and Alice about California. It's like everybody's sharing the same house, and they're cuddly even outside of the nest. So I thought that was nice, but I had to snap the picture quickly because they were at a roadside. I could see a bike coming along, and I didn't have full time to get the picture. So I was able to grab the picture quickly, but if that cyclist hadn't come along, it would have been even better. But these are Guira cuckoos, and you got to love the hairstyle. I also work on Alaska, so when I'm not in Argentina, I'm in Alaska. Very quickly, just a few pictures working on this bird, Rosy Finch. It's just got unique sort of plumage coloration. Their hyper-aggression. The point I want to make here is that I use my photography to actually collect data at this thing. So all the birds are color banded, uniquely color banded, and so white, purple, orange is having a fight with somebody else, and most of the time both birds are banded. So I have 50,000 slides from the last 2 years that are really crappy photos, but they have band information on them. And so we're actually using the camera now to get band information, which is pretty fun. So the photography helps the science. And there's a slowed down one that shows that these guys really do fight a lot. And we're discovering fun things like males just do weird, this is a courtship behavior. They do some of the strangest things for any songbird. It's almost like a prairie chicken, some of the things they do. We're the weirdos that go to St. Paul for this because St. Paul Island is famous for seabirds and vagrants. And so most photographers that would go to St. Paul would want to see stuff like this, like puffins. And so again, this is what, in my film days, I would have never gotten this picture with a digital camera, low light, and the tracking ability. It's almost too easy, but this is what most people go to St. Paul Island for. And there's two species of puffins. This is a horned puffin with a feather to line its nest, not its cap. They nest in little rock burrows. And so I kind of like this picture of the cuddly pair watching out of their cavity. And this has to be one of the great birds of the world. As St. Paul has lots of relatives of puffins. They're called auklets. These are called crested auklets, male and female. They smell like tangerines. I have never smelled them, but there's famous studies on this. And when they nest in the millions, you can apparently smell the islands from sea because it smells like citrus. And they spend a lot of time smelling each other to sort of size up their cologne. And this is a few other birds. And this is anybody know what this bird's doing? It's pretending it has a broken wing. They works against foxes, not people, but it's basically saying, I have a broken wing, you should chase me and don't look for my nest. It works. And this was a rock sandpiper. This is a case where individual variation matters. Most shorebirds, when you're near their babies, freak out and give alarm calls. These parents were completely chill. They had babies running around the road, totally oblivious. And well, this is a good chance to photograph babies. And so you can see the beautiful plumage on this guy. Normally he'd be hunkered down in the vegetation. And nice mammals. This is a fox den right by our place. 9 puppies. And they were hilarious. This looks have like a guilty parents brought in a dead murder. It's like, oops. And this was fun on the way out. This is a Arctic tern with a stickleback that's bright red, and it's it didn't eat. It was flying around trying to attract a mate with its really colorful thing. And I have about 5 minutes more of Santa Cruz, so we can do that, or we can end now, depending on what people are thinking. We have time. What do you guys? This is the local. So this is the local stuff. So recognize where that is. Next spring, go out there. This is right at the entrance to Natural Bridges. It's right in front of you. You can get nice pictures with a cell phone. It's an incredible opportunity. There's hundreds of them, and so this is right in town. For seeing cool things coming in. And so you can see they're spread on the rocks. So right at the entrance around March, look out for that. And Sharon mentioned the Seymour Center. And in the last couple of days, I've been photographing stuff at the Seymour Center. There's a fairly tame 2 or 3 barn owls that fly around the coastal campus. Sometimes they come out before sunset. People have been going and watching them. So right at the entrance to the coastal campus, where there's that short-term parking, look in the field out there. You're almost certain to see a barn owl. And so I went out after a student told me, and within a minute of being there, this owl came by, caught a rodent, flew, a red tail chased it, grabbed it. They were trying to steal the prey. I wasn't actually even ready to set up. And I haven't seen it since. Grabbed by the talons, but the barn owl got away, was able to hang on to its prey. And you can see it's still got its rodent up here. And so that's pretty fun. I'll show you a couple more. And I've been going out in the evenings. And so look at this bird. One of my colleagues said it looks like E.T. It's got an alien type face. I actually like to think they're flying heads. It's basically, they're hunting entirely by noise. It's like mostly head. It's crazy. And the lighting, the golden hour lighting in the evening is kind of nice. Just gorgeous, gorgeous birds. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. As Monty Python would say, beautiful plumage. Other fun things you can see in the coastal campus are around here. This is one of my favorite pictures. Long-tailed weasel with a rubber boa. And this is an example of, if you know your biology, it ran towards me, dropped the snake, and I thought it was a mouse, took a picture, realized it was a snake. And I knew it would come back. Predators aren't going to leave prey, and it came back. It gave me a second to get this picture, grabbed its prey. But these are gorgeous animals, bright orange. Okay, we're down to about 5 pictures left. Oh, up by Davenport, but they're on the coastal campus. You can see them by the Seymour Center.
But what is?
Oh, it's a long weasel. Yeah, so they're down here. Yep. Neary Lagoon, if you go to the sewage, you can see wood ducks, and this was kind of nice. It swam. This is not Photoshop. This is actually the background of the vegetation. My backyard sometimes has photo opportunities. This is a hare and my daughter called Clarence, rodent control. When you can use it, it's taking care of the pocket gopher problem. And the bird got tame, so I could just follow it around while it was removing pocket gophers. Also right by my house, some Cooper's hawks nested, and she didn't like me. She was happy. It was in a parking lot, for crying out loud, right by the women's center. Hundreds of people around, totally ignore them. Whenever the female saw me, she said, I don't like that guy. So come in. But she just come after me once. And then it's like, all right. It was like almost like a deal we had. And so the spectacular bird. And I think that is it. That is the end. It's a bit longer than the 40 minutes, but I had to cobble it together.
So, the bird flu, is it certain kinds of birds that are being hit?
Yes. There's studies on that. Waterfowl historically seem to be able to deal with this. So they actually show the antibodies, like after you've had COVID and didn't die from COVID, you have the antibodies. Waterfowl are not that badly affected by the current strain, but carry it. And there's a few others that are reservoir species, but then there's other taxonomic groups that is kind of spotty. Raptors and scavengers are definitely vulnerable because they're eating sick birds. And there's a few other groups. Yes, so it's not uniform. But the literature I read said this last outbreak is the worst ever wildlife die-off recorded in history. It hit marine mammals, it hit birds globally. It's tens of millions of individual animals. So it's pretty serious.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Bruce.
All right. I'm not sure if you're going to do this again. If you would actually repeat, you can then give me feedback on shortening. You may want different photographers next year, but if actually this becomes a thing, I'd be happy to do it again. But
Okay.
you'd have to let me know what to cut.
Well,
Well, I'm glad I did it.